Hey, you all, Justine Gonzalez here. I will be your teacher for this short workshop on exploring trust in the workplace. So one of the things I want to hop into is, first of all, professionally, the dynamics and climate of workplace are changing, specifically in the United States and also on a global scale after the pandemic. One example of this is you could not have caught me wearing this on some type of video or professional call, even probably 7 or 8 years ago, within the decade, because it just wasn't how I was trained. I'm a former K-12 school principal. I've worked with nonprofits, and now had my consulting firm for about 6 years and continue to grow our network and amazing team here at Educator Aid. Our goal is to put out resources that help you activate and prioritize communication and cultural context. But let's get back to this idea of the video. And I wanted to talk about trust in the workplace. I share very vulnerably about my own professional experiences because I became a licensed principal at the age of 26. And I entered the teaching workforce in the K-12 setting at the age of 21. So because of those milestones, as well as being a first generation college grad, that comes with territory, right, of being younger. And currently in the workplace, we are operating across 5 different represented generations at any given workplace. That's a lot of different perspectives. And then you throw in socio-political constructs such as race, ethnicity, gender. These are all constructs, human constructs, and they've been used to separate people, quite frankly, and categorize people over time. I think it's a natural part of the human brain to want to categorize. It's partly how we are wired. And so when we think about trust in the workplace, first of all, I think post-pandemic, this whole concept of how we collaborate across teams and how a space is deemed safe for people, those are all very ambiguous conversations and require a heck of a lot of commitment and work on the part of teams who say, we really want to develop trust across our workforce. So when you think about the workplace and you think about just trust in the workplace, if you see this, drop in the comments, what have you heard in relation to that? Or what have been your experiences when people talk about trust in the workplace? So I want to give this analogy because as I was making my commute back home after working with an incredible executive leadership team, they're a corporation of about 3,000 employees in the corporate world, corporate sector. And they're also a chain of retail stores. So that's their industry. It was interesting because I was thinking about how willing this group of executives were to share with each other. And also this same core team has been pretty consistently meeting on a monthly basis, specifically to start to get to know one another and specifically talk through perceptions, perspectives, their own experiences related to DEI work, diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, DEIA work, however you're used to hearing those terms. So I say all this to say, they've now been meeting consistently about 4 years. And they make a very big commitment, even though they are in an industry where it really is about sales and the bottom line. They've made this effort to really examine how they connect and collaborate across roles, across teams, across their entire corporation. So that has a multitude of sites, right, with different employees, different roles. So as I'm driving home, I was just observing on the expressway how it requires, and I'm speaking from a United States context. I have driven in other countries as well, but I'm going to specifically speak to my own context, which is currently the United States. And I acquired my driver's license at the age of 17. And I think now I've been driving about 20 years. So I was thinking about trust, and I was thinking about, wow, every time I get into my car, I really have to trust other people that I don't even know and will probably never actually see. And if I do catch a glimpse of them, I'll probably never see them again in my entire life. And let me break this down a little bit more. On our expressways, the speed limit is usually around 70. People are usually going anywhere from 80 to 90 miles per hour in the greater Chicago area, which is where I live. And just this idea of the lanes are painted on, But there is nothing more in place than just trusting the other humans operating vehicle, excuse me. There's nothing more in place than some painted lines. Okay, so if we just even talk about the lanes, let's not even get into the toll systems, red lights, stoplights, different traffic signs. Although when you really break down this idea of trust on the roads, and as an analogy to then looking at why then is it so hard in the workplace for us to connect and build trust with our colleagues. And again, put your experiences in the comments. What comes up for you, even when I say trust in the workplace? Sounds like a very almost catchphrasey thing that also started to come up more and more post-pandemic, post-global racial unrest, which has been for centuries and centuries, and it's been heightened at different points. And this has been one of those historical times, just my own personal opinion and observation. So if we know these things, and then we've also identified that the constructs exist, yes, on the roadways, let's go to our example here. We know that there's people who break traffic laws. We know there's people who drive without licenses. We know that there are people who are probably underage in driving. There are probably people who have impairments, health impairments, and legitimately should maybe not be driving. People drive under the influence of drugs and alcohol. People like all these decisions, but yet we still get into our cars almost daily if we're privileged enough to have cars. But those of us who have cars, or even taking an Uber, Lyft, etc., taxi, we do it all the time. And we don't think that deeply. We don't think that deeply about how much you actually have to trust complete strangers on the roadway to follow some painted lines. Isn't that curious? And accidents happen, right? So accidents happen a lot. So I think one of the risks, if we were to break down the risks of trying to establish trust in the workplace, is there can be accidents. That means people are going to say things that maybe they're ignorant, like they don't know, or they're unaware that what they're saying may be offensive to someone, especially when you start to have authentic conversations. And that's a risk. That's a risk. Now, the reward, to value the diversity of perspective, to value the collaboration that comes with deeper trust, to value how we can rapidly expand and grow. Excuse me, my dog is in the background. She wants to co-teach, I guess. So how we even value others' perspectives, that richness, that reward of the actual trust building, it's going to, if I'm a corporation, it's going to impact your bottom line positively. I have seen this over and over. If you're in a school system, it's going to impact your results for kids. Again, because you're valuing people first. So one of the risks is that of building trust in the workplace is there's going to be accidents. And with accidents, there needs to be communication. So the number two thing I would point out is, just like the roadways, when we are driving and we're just trusting that complete strangers are actually abiding by laws and that they're following these painted lines on the road. Again, just going back to this concept of stay in your lane. I've heard that a lot in professional settings too. And people say, why don't people know the role? Why don't people know their responsibilities, et cetera, right? Why don't they stay in their lane? I think part of trust is largely contingent upon the culture of communicating in a workplace. So for example, on almost any employee engagement, employee satisfaction survey, my company creates a lot of custom surveys with our clients, for culture analysis, and also readiness levels to engage in different conversations, et cetera. But in all of those, the most cited thing is always going to be something about communication. And one of the things that our team is very passionate about is how are we, you hear the old adage, the old phrase, treat others how you want to be treated. And one of the things that we learn more and more in our work to support adaptive leadership skills, communication skills, et cetera, is no, treat others how they want to be treated. So in order for me to actually build trust, I would have to first start to try to understand someone and actually get to know them. That is also a skill set. And it's an art, because the ability to connect, especially when it comes to connecting across cultures different than your own, that requires time and space. It requires intentionality, and it requires that willingness of consistently exercising our muscles and being okay with making mistakes. We make mistakes all the time on the roadways. Sometimes we let it affect us with what we call road rage. Sometimes we let it hinder our ability to stay neutral. So you see how I'm making these parallels to the workplace. But when I feel unsafe, or I feel like I can't trust my colleagues, that is what then balloons into even the retention issues we see, the just everything, you know? So trust in the workplace. I want to hear about your experiences. We want to have some more targeted free learning workshops here to get conversations going, even with your teams, even if you just take away a question from this, that you go, you know, I want to ask my staff this, or I want to ask my colleagues this, or I want to ask my boss this, or my supervisor. We would love to hear about your experiences, and we would love to continue to put out content that aligns to some really current topics. Again, we work closely with a tri-sector portfolio, which is made up of nonprofits, for-profit corporations, and also K-12 schools. So let us know in the comments. Our team absolutely reads any comments. We are so grateful for our subscribers. So be sure to hit subscribe and support us. Check out our podcast list on here, the Cultural Capacity Podcast, as well as our featured voices interviews on the podcast. But yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you for really reflecting on yourself as a leader, and we hope to continue to support you on your journey. But trust in the workplace, just something that I was really pondering today and wanted to come on and share about. If you want more resources for your own leadership legacy, or also strategies for getting to know people, like what I just spoke about, and some processes and protocols for how to do that, we can put in the caption below a link to one of our books that we support here at Educator Aid. It's called The Social Capital Quotient. All right. Thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to hit subscribe. Take care.